Hunter Biden, as you might know, was accused of failing to pay nearly $1.4 million in taxes from 2016 to 2019. He pled guilty to all 9 charges. His sentencing is scheduled for December 16th, and he faces the possibility of up to 17 years in prison. Now, it comes nearly 3 months after a jury convicted Hunter Biden on 3 felony gun charges. Joining us now, Mark Geragos, Hunter Biden's attorney in the most recent case. Mark, thank you for being with us here on the Hill. First time, I believe. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Of course. So your colleague, Abby Lowell, said yesterday that Hunter Biden decided to make this decision to, quote unquote, put his family first. Tell me how Hunter Biden came to that decision, and tell me what Hunter Biden was like in the most recent 24 hours or so after deciding to make this plea deal.
Well, I think, the Abby, who you were just invoking, had tried the case in Delaware, and by all accounts, I wasn't there, but by all accounts, it was traumatic. He had to relive the addiction, and back there in Delaware, as I sit here in Los Angeles, it was the special counsel's position that he was an addict in order to prove that gun case. And so they went through and, frankly, I think destroyed or tried to destroy him and make him relive that part of his life in order to get a conviction. He came out here. I was hired a couple of months ago, and we immediately started investigating this, and it became apparent to me that he had real defenses to this case. Number one, you had mentioned $1.4 million in taxes. All of the taxes were paid. Not only were all of the taxes paid, but it's his contention, and based on some of the experts that we consulted, that he's owed over $100,000 in a tax refund.
Why did he plead guilty then? So why did he plead guilty?
Let me tell you why. The special counsel asked, number one, that the judge disallow the fact that he paid his taxes. The judge agreed. The special counsel asked specifically to eliminate our expert on addiction. Judge agreed. So he did not get a tax, and also a tax expert or a limited tax expert, did not get an addiction expert, was not going to be able to tell the jury about the paying of the tax. And I think most importantly and traumatic to him, we were not allowed to talk about the death of his mother and his sister at a very young age and the death of his brother as contributing or being causal to the addiction. Once you eliminate those trauma, then he had a very tough decision to make. Do I go forward with this case, put my family through all of the salacious details of my addiction that I'm now 4 to 5 years removed from, or do I just plead open and hope that the judge realizes that was a dark period in my life?
Okay, so you're a parent, Mark. I'm a parent. The White House has said that President Biden will not pardon, will not commute his son. President Biden has said that himself. There's 84 million families, I believe, in this country, Mark. I do not believe you will find a single parent who believes that President Biden will not pardon or commute Hunter Biden. I do not believe you will find a single parent in this country who, if they had the chance to stop their own child from going to federal prison, would do just that. Do you believe that Hunter Biden is getting a pardon before President Biden leaves office?
I wish I had the knowledge or have talked to or would have any ability to make that determination or answer your question. I will tell you, you talk about 84 million Americans. I think there's probably 10 million Americans who have either been late on paying their taxes or late on filing their taxes, and they don't get criminally prosecuted. So I don't know the answer to that question, but I'll tell you this, the idea that this special counsel should have been prosecuting this case, I think there's a better than even possibility that the special counsel statute gets invalidated prior to sentencing by the either the U.S. Supreme Court or the 11th Circuit. Remember, down in Florida, the judge threw out the case against Trump because special counsel, based on the concurrence by Justice Thomas, special counsel is not authorized by law. So that's the same argument goes here.
Thank you for watching, and make sure you go to joinnn.com to find NewsNation on your television provider. And don't forget to click the red subscribe button below to get more of NewsNation's fact-driven, unbiased coverage.